Stephen Jolley, veteran community broadcaster, RPH Australia and Vision Australia Radio. In conversation with Beck Pasqualini, RPH Australia.
And it's interesting that you caught the bug for radio, and you've obviously got a bent for technology and for new technology, because you must have been a pretty early adopter in terms of being an IT professional, and even to this day you still present a radio show about new technologies for the blind and low vision community. Is that right?
You've done your homework. Very good. Yes. Now, in the early days, my job was described as being a computer programmer. So what I'd have to do is write the set of instructions that the computer system would interpret to produce what we wanted it to produce. They might be reports. They might be financial reports. They might be stock reports, etc. The way people normally do it is in those days they punched stuff in on punched cards. So my typing was all right for that. I could do that pretty good. And then the cards were read by the computer system, and then a printer, a line printer, would print out the pages of output for each what we called a job that was run, where you submitted this set of instructions to the computer and processed them, and the printed reports came out. Now, a lot of that process was the development of the computer program, and so it was important to me to read what it had produced. We had an innovative approach which I can't take claim for, and nobody in Australia can. It was devised by people in America who used to write a computer program which would convert each character that was to be printed, translate it, I should say, into a pattern of full stop characters. And so the embosser for us would then, just before it printed the stuff out, it would run the content through this translation program, which would produce a whole lot of full stops on the page. And then mechanically what we did was put a piece of rubber behind the paper, so that when the paper was struck by the print hammers or whatever approach, there are a couple of approaches to doing the printing, but it's the same thing. The soft backing would cause impressions in the paper, or Braille dots. So that's how we got Braille out of the computer. So I did that in the early days. Then later on, some geniuses discovered that we could generate speech with computer systems. So we had the synthesised speech starting to be produced, and I first had meaningful exposure to that. I did see a talking calculator in about 1978, but the first computer output really was in the mid-1980s. That meant that I could have the computer speak to me. And by then we weren't using the punch card systems, of course. We were working at computer terminals, and the content was normally coming up on the screen. Well, this speech synthesizer system, or screen reader as it's described, would be able to intercept what was going to the screen and speak it.
So you have a program, don't you, where you talk about new technology. Is it particularly for people with vision impairments?
Yes, it is, though it's intended to be of interest to the broader community, so that people listening can go, so the Google Home is really good, because all you have to do is talk to it, and that would be very handy for people who find it harder to use a smartphone or some other mobile device to get that information.
So because you're doing that show, you must have come across some really spectacular technology that helps people with vision impairment. Can you tell us a couple?
Yes, well, let me just explain that program I do in partnership with a colleague and friend who works for Vision Australia, and he's Vision Australia's senior technology person. He's blind also, so he lives the technology like I do. And he's based in Gosford. So we get on the Zoom for the radio, and if you're just a casual listener, you'd think he's just in the studio or maybe in another studio.
So Zoom, for people who don't know, is...
Sorry?
What is Zoom for people who don't know?
Zoom is one of the conference or linking audio-video technologies that you can use. It's like Skype, that's another one. FaceTime is the Apple one.
Yeah.
Zoom is very good. It's very accessible. In other words, it's relatively easily usable by people who are using voiceover or who are using screen magnification, which is what a lot of people with low vision do, or screen enhancement. So they might change the contrast, they might bold things, etc. But yeah, that's what Zoom is. It's a meeting, one of those meeting technologies, shall we say, and it works very well. So yes, we talk about a number of different things. It's where through that program, I was introduced to a technology called IRA. When I say I was introduced to it, it's because for the majority of the time, David, as the technology expert, identifies the stories each week, tells me about them, and then we just discuss them. So we might talk about 6 or 7 different things in one program. It might be an update to Microsoft Windows that's of interest. It might be an alternate way to users to access the commands on an Apple device. In other words, there's a device that's got a keyboard on it, so you can physically push keys, and it has a Bluetooth connection to the phone. That's an example. But the IRA technology, I must tell you about because it's a beauty. IRA is a technology that helps someone who is blind or has low vision to be more aware of and move around in the environment that they're in. What happens is that the user connects to someone who could be anywhere in the world, could be in America, because this is where the headquarters of the service is, and they're talking to someone online with a video link as well as an audio link. So it might be you. It's like if you have a FaceTime link with a friend, but this is a service, a service you pay for. So much for 100 minutes a month, something like that. And I've used it to have the agent at the other end of the phone help me negotiate or navigate my way down the street to find a shop that I'm interested in. I recently needed to be reminded of the controls of one of our hi-fi devices here, the tuner. So I rang up and I asked the agent, could she, in this case, just tell me what the controls were on it. And she just read them off the front because she could see from the camera on the phone.
That's a beautiful use of technology.
One other time I dropped the cover off a remote control, you know, the battery cover. Couldn't find the thing. Rang up and she said, looked around, got me to sweep the phone, under into certain places, under chairs, and yep, there it is, under the corner of that chair. So that was pretty good. When there's no one else around who can have a look and find it.
Did she tell you about all the missing socks under there as well?
I was careful what places I took it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But that's Vicky and I have used it, my wife, because she has low vision, if we're away somewhere to read the room compendium, to read the room compendium, or to check out the room service menu or something like that.
Yeah, when you travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really neat one. That's probably, I mean, there are others as well, but that's a good example of technology doing something you wouldn't have dared dream about years ago.
Can you show us your watch, which was talking to you just before we started?
So if I tap my watch...
11:04 a.m. and 43 seconds.
Right, so it's just told me that I've been rambling on for half an hour already.
That's useful.
11:04, it just said then, in 43 seconds. But I can use it for other things too, of course.
11:04 a.m. and 57. Mostly cloudy. 19.
So it's mostly cloudy, 19 degrees.
11:05. The night battery. 92% battery power.
Battery's at 92%. These are, for Apple Watch people, they know that you can put things called complications on your watch, which are just extra pieces of information on the watch face.
Sunset. 8:44 p.m.
It's telling me when sunset's going to be, and that's very handy. If you don't see light or dark,
Yes.
it's handy to know when sunrise and sunset is. I have no excuses for not knowing when to put the blinds up or down.
So you got your calendar and your, you can access
Yeah.
emails and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I use the phone for that. I
Right,
have
okay,
an
yeah.
iPhone.
Yep.
Again, the iPhone talks.
Voiceover. Portrait. Photos. Doc. Sonos. Recently updated.
Okay, so it's just, I'm looking at the home screen
Double
now.
tap. Mail. 26 unread emails. Messages. Page 26. Various personal and line. Cricket folder.
I
Send
often
apps.
work from the bottom
Standard
down.
football. AFL radio.
So there,
Music,
that's
CD folder,
just my
8 apps,
home
one
screen.
item. Double tap to open.
And is that built into the phone, or is it software you put on the phone?
It's built in. Everybody who has an iPhone has this capability built into it, and it's down through the settings. If you go to settings and then accessibility, and sort of drill down from there, you can find it. And it's a wonderful thing that Apple's done, and we don't often say nice things about Apple, but
Yeah.
Slide down 3 fingers to reveal
Oh, now
notification.
she's going off in your pocket.
but what they have done is built this into it rather than have it as an extra feature that's got to be added on. So I'll tell you about this thing.
Yeah, please do.
Now this thing is called an orbit reader, and what it does is produces its output in the form of Braille. So I can just cursor up and down, and it will read to me, or display for me, the next section of text. So I use that as my notes, or I can use that as my notes. I use another device sometimes as well, because these things evolve. Some are better than others. This one has a characteristic which is a bit irritating in that you can hear it scrolling. Actually, I'm going to go and get you my other device. I forgot that this makes a noise. I used to emboss my notes for broadcasting in Braille on sheets of paper. Now I use this device, which is really a personal computer, which enables me to just come out of there. It enables me to just display, move the cursor up and down to have different dots come up.
And this one's silent, so you can use it
Yeah.
on air. The other one would probably be good for meetings and things like that.
Well, I do use it a lot in that kind of environment, yeah.
And can you type things into it too?
Yes, you type. So I create my notes and store them inside it, yeah. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just moving down to my Talking Tech folder, and I'm picking the notes from one of the particular programs, and now I've got those notes displayed here, and I can just cursor down to each line of the notes, like you would look down a sheet of paper, different lines on it.
Interviewers Beck Pasqualini, RPH Australia, and Kim Stewart, 4ZZZ. Produced for RPH Australia and the Ability Radio Project, 4ZZZ FM.